Third example is for the outcome about how do we ensure patient and staff well-being. And this is an example of practice development being integrated with releasing time to care, which is productive ward, if you probably are familiar with, around here, I would have thought. So instead of it being done as a separate thing, this actually came about as a result of the releasing time to care work. So they had actually, in that work, been using the productive ward, productive series, but it integrated emancipatory practice development processes into it. So this clinic wasn't doing them as separate things. But what they actually found was that whilst they were making a lot of changes through the productive ward work, the staff were starting to say they just felt like pawns in this process, that they were just constantly achieving these new things that were being put at them. And the example, of course, that they were using was that despite all the improvements they made, despite all this saving in time, they saw no replacement of staff, that people who left were not being replaced. And of course that was their indicator of actually we're saving all this money, but where's the money going? Because that's fundamentally what releasing time to care is about. It's about releasing time from unproductive things and putting them into productive things for more patient care. And one of the main things that they started to focus on was the fact that patients were hanging around quite a lot still. And what they actually did was created communicative spaces, which is reflective spaces really, for people to engage in feelings about their work, to discuss their emotions. They actually did some other things. They brought in some relaxation work. They offered massage to staff as well. And they introduced that latest thing called Schwartz rounds, which I don't know if you've heard of Schwartz rounds. Schwartz rounds are ward rounds about feelings. So instead of just talking about patient X having X horrible thing done to them, we talk about how it is we're feeling about patient X having X horrible thing done to them. So it starts to put a sense of emotion into the work. And interestingly, the whole thing about not being replaced and all that stuff disappeared, and they became much more satisfied with the work. And it was essentially about people feeling that they were being used rather than feeling as part of a team. And my last example is about creating a therapeutic culture, that final outcome from being person-centered. Again, a mental health unit, this is the unit in Sydney actually, who's working on the Essential of Care program that I work with there. And they go through 18-month cycles of practice development, observations, reflections, patient stories, making changes, re-evaluation. And they have been doing that, this unit has been doing that for 4 years now. They've mapped it onto the person-centered practice framework, so every 18 months they pick off another element of that framework to say we're focusing on this because we're constantly building our culture of person-centeredness. They very early in this process managed to get those outcomes into trust board reporting. So they're able to show the trust, the outcomes that they're achieving, which are kind of these soft outcomes, and how they link to the trust strategy, which is kind of really more hard outcomes. That has been informing the kind of education commissioning they want. So each year they review that action plan against the framework and say, so what kind of courses, what kind of study, what kind of training do we need for our staff to help them to achieve this? So instead of random attending courses, it's actually really linked into the journey that they're making around creating a therapeutic culture. And it is held up as a model of good practice in Sydney because it's just an integrated part of how they work within this mental health unit now, and it's a very vibrant place to be. So, what I want to leave you with is to say, France has happened, and it's in a way good that it did, because it has opened up this space for things that for a long time many of us thought were going to disappear, those so-called soft things, those things around dignity and respect and compassion, that for people like me who've been working in this area for a long time, were very much on the fringes when it came to organizational strategy. And now we're center stage, so we need to grab that space. But you know, what we have to realize is that we don't change cultures overnight. We don't do it by a 6-month project. We don't do it by reorganizing the unit or reorganizing the team or reorganizing the organization. But what we do is trying to build these kind of processes into our everyday work so that they become the cultural norm, and that those other things are the exception to what it is we're actually about. And that's it.